Hey, History Through Film. Welcome to U2-L15 Jim Crow. All right, your job, you're going to watch this ed puzzle, answer the questions that are in blue text directly on the ed puzzle. Learning goals. Students will be able to analyze complex and interacting factors within the long civil rights movement and to identify obstacles to the success of the various civil rights movements, such as the Black Rights Movement. Heads up, today we will talk about racism and terms related to the suppression of Black Americans. Although some of these terms people events happened in the past, it is important that we learn about them today as to recognize the past and not make the same mistakes. If you have any questions or want to learn more, please let me know. So what is Jim Crow? So most of you have gone through US history. Some of you haven't yet, and that's no worries because we'll talk about it today. But what do you know about Jim Crow laws? Or what do you know about the civil rights movement? And if you don't know anything, you can just say, I don't know, but I know a lot of you know something at least. All right, so there's quite a bit to talk about with that era, especially the civil rights era. So we can talk about protest. Little Rock Nine is a really popular example. Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, MLK, the NAACP, the Black Panthers. You might also think of where things were segregated, such as water fountains. There were separate water fountains for white people and people of color. So, what is Jim Crow? So, Jim Crow started after the Civil War. So, the Civil War was from 1861 to 65, and it really started in the southern states. That is where lawmakers legalized segregation in public places. So they told where Black people and people of color could sit on trains, what water fountains they could use, what schools they could attend, and much, much more. These numerous laws would become known as the Jim Crow laws. So, why was it named Jim Crow? That's a good question. So, it's actually named after a fictional character that was created by white supremacists before the Civil War. The character had racial stereotypes of what white supremacists saw in Black Americans. So, these laws also banned Black people from voting, although they were legal citizens after the Civil War. These laws were enforced by police, but they are also enforced by white supremacy groups such as the KKK. So, are Jim Crow laws still around today? That's a really good question. No, but also kind of yeah. So these Jim Crow laws officially became illegal after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Today, there is still stereotyping and discrimination across American societies. One of the biggest examples of that would be the incarceration rates. So this is data from 2018, so a little old, but fairly recent. You'll see here there is a large discrimination between people of color being imprisoned versus white people being imprisoned. Then we have segregation. That is the act of keeping things apart. Racial segregation is keeping people of different races separate. So, for example, in this photo, you will see that there are two different counters to order ice cream. There's the white counter and there's the colored people counter that's around the corner. So, other vocab. You will also see this word in a lot of historical documents and newspapers. It is a very outdated, frowned upon word. It became outdated in the 1970s. Some older generations still use it. Some Black seniors still use it to describe their identity. On the other hand, some people use it in a negative connotation. So that's why today it is very outdated. Then you might also see the word Caucasian. So Caucasian really has two different definitions. One's a racial and one's a geographical definition. But we're going to talk about the racial definition. It is an old term referring to someone who is of white ancestry. Then we also have Aryan. So this is most notably used in World War II by Hitler. It refers to Hitler's ideal person, which would be someone with white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. The term is used prior to World War II as well. It is a fictional, meaning a fake, superior race of humans. We also have eugenics. So eugenics is kind of a tricky definition to describe. So it is the false belief that humans could be bred to be a perfect being. This really started in the 1800s and is very immoral and not scientifically proven. So scientists and governments ran Methods such as involuntary sterilization, segregation, and social exclusion would rid society of individuals deemed by them to be unfit. That's from the National Human Genome Research Institute. So, for example, eugenicists, so people who thought they were scientists and maybe thought they were actually saying something true, would travel around to different like county fairs, state fairs, stuff like that, and spread these false ideologies. So, and a big example of eugenics would be the Tuskegee experiment. So, that started in 1932 in Macon County, Alabama. The US government promised 600 black men free medical care in return for experiments. But those black men didn't know those doctors were giving them syphilis. This caused 128 men to die, and then birth defects passed down to their offspring. It took until 1997 for the US to apologize for this. Then there's lynching. So lynching is the public killing of someone who has not undergone the court system. So between 1882 and 1965, 4,743 people were lynched in the United States. 90% of that number were black people killed by white mobs. We also have redlining. That's the practice of denying people access to a loan because of where they live. So even if they are totally qualified to live in a certain area, they are denied, particularly due to either their race or their religion. So here's an example. It's in the 1950s, and a person making an average salary, which was about $3,300, walks into the bank. The person says, "Hey, I need a loan for a house. I want to buy in North Minneapolis." And the banker says, "No, can do. We don't give loans to people who want to live in North Minneapolis." And this was legal all the way up until 1968. We also have racial covenants. So that's statements and property deeds. That's where owners had to sign that they were white and would not sell property to any non-white person. And this was legal in Minnesota until 1964. So here is an example of a racial covenant. This is in Lake of the Isles in Minneapolis. So it says the party of the second part hereby agrees that the premises hereby conveyed shall not at any time be conveyed, mortgaged, or leased to any person or persons of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Turkish, Mongolian, Semitic, or African blood or descent. Said restrictions and covenants shall run with the land, and any breach of any or either thereof shall work a forfeiture of title, which may be enforced by re-entry. These people were serious. We also have slums. So that's urban housing, typically a high population density. They are very poorly built or maintained houses as well, and they are associated with poverty. We also have the Harlem Renaissance. That was from 1910s until the 30s. It started in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. That's where there's the growth of Black culture, art, music, and literature. And then there's the NAACP. So that's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That got started in 1909, and it's still going on today. And it's a civil rights activist organization. If you want to learn more about it, here's the link to the website, by the way. So why? Miss Corey, these are good information, but why did we learn about this today? That's a great question. So the next movie is Hidden Figures. It is about Black female scientists in NASA. They had to not only fight for gender equality, but also racial equality. So most of you have learned this in U.S. history, so that'd be my 11th and 12th graders right now. 9th and 10th probably haven't, so that's why I just kind of did a brief overview of some of the important vocab terms that may pop up during some of our lessons. All right, wow, we talked about a lot of vocab words today. So do you have any questions at all? And if you don't have any, that's okay, just say none. All right, let's wrap this up. Today we learned about Jim Crow, segregation, Caucasian, Orion, eugenics, lynching, redlining, racial covenant, slums, Harlem Renaissance, and the NAACP. Next up, you're going to do U2-L15, Jim Crow of the North. You'll also finish that off in lesson 17. These are Edpuzzle videos. I will be grading what questions you get right or wrong. The videos are about how Minnesota racial segregated housing. If you have any questions or comments or simply want to learn more, let me know. I'm happy to help out. Thanks for watching. Bye.